Hello everyone, Jared Borman here. This video is to sort of show how to identify the weak spot within my classroom teaching. And I like to think of it as sort of how do I get back to the real process of learning, because let's be honest, within education today, the process of teaching has become a little too convoluted because of all the restrictions that are placed upon teachers and rules and everything else that the teacher has to abide by in order to go through the process of teaching, when really we're just trying to get the kids to learn. And if we focus on that process, I think other things will just kind of fall into place. But the thing is, with my teaching, I have to identify how do I strengthen my teaching. I have to first identify what are the parts that are not working. And that's what this video is going to help with. Now, when we talk about the process of learning, we see all these different initiatives that we, in the 21st century here, blended learning, flipped learning, personalized learning, and everything else. The thing is, though, these are all great initiatives, but with each one, they try to focus back on the process of learning within the modern classroom today. But what does that exactly look like? Well, learning as we know it is Bloom's taxonomy. We've seen this chart within our college prep classes when it comes to the education field. This was introduced to us early on, brought up multiple times throughout our courses, and this is the first model that I was introduced to back when I was in college, and it looked very similar to this. However, over the course of time, I've kind of liked this model more, this revised Bloom's taxonomy by Lauren Anderson. And the reason why is because when we take that triangle and we flip it upside down, we take that taxonomy, you see that the lowest levels are smaller. So if we think of size in relation to the time spent within those levels, this fits perfect because this looks like the lower levels are the least important. They're important. I mean, they're there. They're part of the process, but that's not where students should be spending the majority of their time. Instead, we're focused on these upper levels. They're the largest part. They're the ones that, this is where the students need to be spending most of their time, because this is where the deeper connections of learning happen. This is where lifelong learning happens. Not just learning for a test, but learning because it's important for years down the road. And that's where we make that happen in those upper levels. So I kind of thought of this little bit of equation that helps to define some stuff for us. Number one, I'd like to think of the idea that students are creating, evaluating, or analyzing as frequently as possible. That means daily, if possible. And if I get my students to operate in those upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy on a daily basis over the duration of time, like over the course of a semester or school year, that's going to have some good effects. First and foremost, studies have shown that if I have students in those levels, in those upper levels, as frequently as possible, as long as possible, I actually have a decrease in classroom management issues. I also happen to have an increase in attendance because students want to be in my classroom. I have an increase in homework completion rate, and I have an increase in student achievement. Now, how can that top part equal that bottom part? For the mere fact of the whole thing is engagement. To me, that's my definition of engagement. I hear the word engagement being used multiple different ways when it comes to teaching, when I go to conferences and engage in discussions with other teachers. And the thing is, engagement, some teachers are using it as, I need students to be looking at me. They may be looking at you, but are they cognitively engaged? Are they doing anything cognitively that is even remotely in the upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy? If not, yes, they're looking at you, but they're not cognitively engaged. If I can get my students in those upper levels as frequently as possible over the course of time, I'm going to have higher engagement, which means I'm going to have students that want to be in my classroom. I'm going to have less classroom behavior issues and everything else. So to me, if I had to put a definition to engagement, that is what it would be right there. Now, here's an example of how this works. This is a person example from my classroom when I first started teaching. Just to tackle the issue of vocab in a high school and middle school English classroom, we had a vocab packet. And this vocab packet had several different methods for the students to work with 15 vocab words, such as fill in the blank, matching, all that stuff. It was a vocab packet. However, that vocab packet, students cognitively could not get beyond the applying level of Bloom's taxonomy. It's just a fact. I'm asking them to do nothing else other than apply these 15 words to this particular packet. Then it came to a process of this leveled vocabulary. And I thought, this is great. I have level A, which is the easier words, all the way to level Z, which are the harder words, and therefore students are on the level that they're supposed to be at, and there's a packet to match that level. So essentially what I ended up doing was differentiating the applying level is all it is. In no way, shape, or form did the students get to the upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy. They're still not there. That's why my students were still being frustrated when it came to anything we were doing in vocab, and nothing was really sinking in for long term. So I decided to do away with the vocab packets, get rid of them completely. And instead, I thought to myself, instead of differentiating the applying level, I need to be differentiating the creating level. So what I ended up doing was giving 15 words to my students, and I said, based on the word, based on the definition, and based on the part of speech, use the word correctly within context. And so I had students creating a play. I had students creating a vine or 15 separate vines for each word and then piecing them all together. I had students using GarageBand in order to create a rap or even a newscast, some kind of audio file. Several students wanted to create videos, whatever it may be. But they at least had the option of differentiating that creating level. And the words then, therefore, were more concrete because deeper connections were being made. Now, some teachers may say, why do I need to use technology? And nobody's forcing anyone to use technology. But my argument would be, I don't know of another tool, whether it's a laptop, an iPad, or whatever. I don't know of another tool other than technology that can take students from remembering to creating more efficiently and in a more engaged fashion, allowing deeper learning to happen. So just to recap, what is engagement exactly? It's the upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy as frequently as possible over the course of some type of duration. And if you really go by that type of definition, I think you're going to see learning transform inside your classroom. So when it comes to identifying the weak spot, ask yourself, where are my students operating at the lowest levels consistently? For me, it was vocab. For other classrooms, it might be something totally different. But how do I move them from the lowest levels then to the upper levels more frequently? I hope this video helps a little bit in understanding what is the weak spot, how do I identify it, and how do I move it to something that's stronger within my classroom.